Each day, as I set foot on campus, I kept my chin up, wearing an assured grin. The institution's vitality coursed through me as if I were part of its very essence. Pupils chuckled in clusters on the green, instructors rushed between structures with piles of documents, and the murmur of aspirations resonated through every hall. To any spectator, I was merely another radiant young scholar with limitless promise. I was Xena, the girl always ready with a clever retort, able to captivate in any circumstance. My academic performance was flawless, my social circle envied. Yet, hidden beneath my meticulously constructed exterior, I was gasping under the burden of a secret I bore alone. 3 years had passed since I discovered I was HIV positive. 3 years of grappling with the harsh, unbending reality. My life had been forever changed by someone I trusted. I was 18 when I encountered Aiden. He embodied everything I believed I desired: sophisticated, cosmopolitan, and captivating. He made me feel seen in a way no one else ever had. It felt like I was the core of his world. I recall his intense stare, convincing me I was the most stunning girl alive. Aiden filled my ears with vows of a shared future, a love that would triumph over all. I was utterly smitten, oblivious to the warning signs flickering at the edges of my sight. He was older, true, but he insisted I was grown up for my years, that I was exceptional. Months into our bond, I began to feel poorly, constantly fatigued, plagued by peculiar fevers that refused to subside. A regular checkup flipped my world on its head. HIV positive, the physician declared, her tone tranquil yet grave. My heart paused. I could scarcely draw breath. I faced Aiden, trembling with dread and fury. His response was more frigid than I could fathom. He didn't refute it. I didn't think it counted, he remarked, shrugging as if he'd merely spilled a drink, not wrecked my life. The treachery struck me more profoundly than the diagnosis. I plunged into melancholy for months, uncertain of how to proceed. The disgrace, the humiliation, it was like a prison. But within that gloom, a new determination emerged. If Aiden could so recklessly shatter my life, why should I concern myself with others? It began as a notion, a sinister murmur in the depths of my mind. They're all alike, I persuaded myself. Men like Aiden merit this. Initially, the scheme felt intangible, something I'd never truly execute. But with time, the resentment solidified. It was no longer just about Aiden. It was about every man who had ever belittled me, who seized without consent, who deceived, controlled, and betrayed. The initial instance was nearly unintentional. A fellow at a gathering, alluring and confident, presumed I'd accompany him home. I allowed him to believe it was his plan, his triumph. I experienced an unusual feeling of control as we embraced, aware of what I was about to do. It became simpler after that. I began to pursue them, men who believed they were untouchable, who viewed women as prizes or trophies, lecturers who overstepped boundaries with their pupils, peers who bragged about their conquests. I maintained a diary, chronicling each meeting in painstaking detail. Initially, it served as a means to cope with my feelings, but it soon morphed into something more, an account of my vengeance. I assigned each man a pseudonym, detailing how I enticed him, how he gazed at me with longing and confidence. I concluded each entry with the same phrase, "Now you understand the sting of treachery." To those around me, I remained the same jovial and magnetic Xena. I performed my part so convincingly that I occasionally began to believe it myself. Yet, at night, alone in my chamber, the gravity of my deeds weighed on me like a boulder. Everything unraveled one evening when my childhood companion, Kaylee, appeared unexpectedly. We hadn't been close since I began university, but she was always the one who could see past my defenses. She discovered the diary. "Xena," she uttered, her voice quivering as she leafed through the pages. "What is this? Please assure me this is some twisted prank." I froze, unable to face her. My silence was all the affirmation she required. She snapped the diary shut and glared at me, her expression a blend of revulsion and incredulity. "This isn't who you are," she declared, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I don't recognize the person you've become, but this isn't you." Her remarks pierced deeper than I anticipated. I attempted to vindicate myself, to elucidate the anguish and fury that had driven me to this point, but Kaylee refused to hear it. "I comprehend," she stated. "Aiden wounded you. He demolished your faith. But Zena, you've turned into him. You're inflicting the same suffering he caused you." For the first time in years, I felt a shift within me, a fissure in the fortress I had erected around my heart. Days later, the institution was thrown into turmoil. One of my casualties, an educator, admitted during a staff assembly that he had received a positive HIV diagnosis. The news disseminated swiftly, igniting a surge of alarm across the campus. I observed from the periphery, my gut twisting as I witnessed the dread and bewilderment in everyone's eyes. This was no longer a clandestine act of retribution. It had escalated into a public emergency. That evening, I sat in my room, examining the diary. The pages that once felt like badges of honor now seemed like proof of my own malevolence. I pondered Kaylee's words, the educator's tormented expression as he revealed his condition. The burden of my actions finally grew too onerous to endure. Remorse is an odd sensation. It doesn't merely linger. It festers, sprouts talons, and embeds itself deeply into your essence. That remorse ultimately reached its zenith the night I witnessed the chaos it stirred on campus. It wasn't just terror in people's eyes. It was suffering, bewilderment, and deception. They sought explanations, and I recognized I was the sole individual who could provide them. I passed the night grappling with the burden of my choices. By daybreak, I understood what I must do. It wasn't sufficient to merely cease. I had to reveal the truth. Seated at my desk, I opened my laptop and began to type. The words emerged haltingly at first, each keystroke akin to dragging a razor across flesh. But once I commenced, I couldn't halt. I recounted it all. Aiden, the deception, the acrimony that engulfed me, and the vengeance that propelled my deeds. I elucidated the agony that obscured my discernment, the transient instance of dominance that concealed my profound distress. "I am Zena," I composed, my hands trembling. "And I have injured 86 men by deliberately transmitting HIV to them. I believed I was seizing command, but now I perceive I transformed into the exact fiend I abhorred." I published the admission discreetly on a well-known university message board. It was akin to discharging a shriek into the abyss. For a few hours, there was quietude, then the void shrieked back. The confession became viral within a day. It was circulated on every social media platform, disseminated by students, educators, and even outsiders with no affiliation to the university. The responses were a tempest of sentiments: fury, revulsion, astonishment, compassion. Some demanded my instantaneous apprehension, while others attempted to comprehend the shattered individual behind the display. Authorities swiftly traced the post back to me. My apprehension was prompt and conspicuous. As I was escorted away in restraints, the press swooped in like scavengers, cameras blazing, journalists bellowing inquiries. My name and visage were plastered across every monitor, every banner. Zena, the campus menace, the beast among us, the female who wielded HIV as an armament. Each headline felt like another spike in my casket. Individuals who had formerly received me cordially now traversed the road to shun me. I became a mark for digital loathing, fatal intimidations, and incessant examination. For the first time in years, I felt utterly unveiled, divested of the painstakingly assembled veneer I had concealed behind for so long. The tribunal was frigid, in both climate and ambience. Tiers of visages, my prey, their kin, pupils, correspondents, gazed at me, their countenances spanning from wrath to sorrow. My heart raced as I stood before the magistrate, the heft of my actions weighing on me like a multitude of stones. When it was my turn to articulate, I inhaled deeply and advanced. "Your Honor, I am aware there is nothing I can express to reverse the suffering I have inflicted," I initiated, my voice quavering. "I stand here today not to solicit absolution, but to recognize the damage I have caused and assume accountability for it. I discoursed about Aiden, about how his duplicity sowed a seed of ire within me, but I opted to permit that rage to characterize me. I admitted that I had been devoured by my own torment and channeled it externally, inflicting injury on individuals who were undeserving. I recognize this now, and I am truly remorseful. Several in the gathering were weeping, others gazed at me with scorching animosity, but a handful, just a few, observed me with something akin to comprehension. When the moment for sentencing arrived, I was excused from incarceration in favor of a rehabilitation initiative and community service. "You are both a casualty and an offender," the judge declared. "Your road to atonement lies in recognizing this duality and utilizing your narrative to enlighten others." The subsequent months were arduous. I enlisted in a drive to elevate cognizance about HIV, sharing my account with learners, local assemblies, and anyone inclined to listen. Standing before these multitudes, I felt laid bare, my disgrace fully exposed. Yet, as I articulated my experiences, I witnessed the influence of my expressions, how individuals inclined forward, captivated by each phrase, how their eyes mellowed with empathy. Therapy evolved into another facet of my expedition. For the first time, I addressed the anguish I had entombed for so long. I discovered how to pardon Aiden, not for his benefit, but for my own. Harboring that resentment merely contaminated me further, and relinquishing it was the initial stride towards recovery. Reconstructing my life was gradual and agonizing. My kin, formerly estranged, started to reintegrate into my life, tentatively initially. There were uncomfortable pauses and tacit critiques, but with time, we discovered our path back to one another. My parents, grappling with comprehension, conveyed pride in my endeavors to rectify my wrongs. Kaylee, my childhood companion, became my pillar. She was the first to challenge me, the first to convey the reality I needed to acknowledge. Now, she supported me as I attempted to restore my life. I commenced volunteering at medical facilities and backing clusters, aiding others in traversing the stigma and trials of existing with HIV. Each communication reminded me that my chronicle could fulfill our intent, that even in my bleakest instance, there was a chance to generate illumination. Nevertheless, absolution is not a terminus. It is a voyage. There are periods when remorse continues to torment me, when the load of my history menaces to engulf me. I envision the visages of my casualties in my fantasies, hear their voices in my awareness. Certain wounds never entirely mend. Nonetheless, there are intervals of optimism, instances when a scholar expresses gratitude for enlightening their perspective, when a casualty informs me they have discovered a means to advance, when I gaze into the mirror and perceive an individual who endeavors daily to improve. My narrative ignited dialogues I could never have envisaged. Individuals debate the essence of clemency, the repercussions of unrestrained suffering, and the potential for transformation. I am uncertain if I will ever completely repent for my actions, but I have learned that the initial step is opting to encounter the reality, irrespective of its agony. The wounds of my history persist, both apparent and concealed, but they are no longer merely emblems of my blunders. They are memoranda of the lessons I have absorbed, the evolution I have accomplished, and the existences I can still influence. I am not the individual I was 3 years prior, or even a year ago. I am an evolution in progress, a narrative continuously being authored. And while I can never annul the damage I inflicted, I can elect each day to respect the second opportunity one have been granted, assisting others in liberating themselves from the fetters of wrath, anguish, and remorse. It is not a simple route, but it is the sole one deserving of pursuit.